My story starts in the most unexpected way. I never thought something as simple as a driveway would turn into a battle, but that's exactly what happened. What began as a small neighborhood disagreement grew into something so wild, you wouldn't even believe it if it didn't happen to me. It all started with one woman, the so-called Karen of our HOA, who decided that my driveway wasn't really mine. She claimed she had authority over it, and from that moment on, everything changed. You know that one neighbor in every community who acts like they own the entire street? The one who polices everyone's grass height, the color of mailboxes, and even how long a car is parked outside? Yeah, that was her. She wasn't just a neighbor, she was the queen of complaints, the self-appointed sheriff of our HOA. At first, I tried to laugh it off. I mean, who cares if someone says silly things about a driveway? It's literally concrete connected to my house. Of course it's mine. But Karen wasn't joking. She started sending letters, snapping photos, and cornering me whenever I stepped outside. Each time, her voice dripped with authority, like she was the president of some powerful empire, when really she was just a neighbor with too much free time. One day, she marched right up to me while I was washing my car. With her arms crossed, sunglasses sliding down her nose, and that smug expression plastered across her face, she said the words that lit the fire inside me. Your driveway doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the HOA. You can't use it however you want. I froze. My jaw literally dropped. I thought I had misheard her. But she repeated it, louder this time, so that half the street could hear. Can you imagine someone standing on your property, pointing at your driveway, and telling you it isn't yours? The anger bubbled inside me. My fists clenched. My voice trembled, but I kept calm. Karen, this driveway is part of my deed. It's mine. You don't get to decide that. But Karen smirked like she had already won. She pulled out a folder, stuffed with printed pages, highlighted sections, and little sticky notes. She waved it in my face and said, "I have proof." That night, I couldn't sleep. Her words echoed in my head. Proof? What kind of proof could she possibly have? I tossed and turned, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing through every scenario. Was she bluffing? Was there some hidden clause in the HOA agreement I had missed? By morning, I decided to fight back. Here's the thing. When someone tries to strip away something that belongs to you, it lights a fire deep inside. You either give in, or you fight like hell. And I wasn't about to let her bully me out of my own driveway. So I went digging. I pulled out my house documents, searched through the county records, and even contacted the original builder. Hours turned into days. Days turned into weeks. Every paper I found confirmed the same thing. That driveway was mine, legally and officially. But Karen wasn't backing down. She doubled her efforts. She started sending me violation notices in the mail. She even called a meeting with the HOA board, trying to rally others against me. It felt like living under a microscope. Every move I made, every car I parked, every guest I had over, she documented it like I was some kind of criminal. Neighbors began whispering. Some rolled their eyes at her antics. Others avoided me altogether, not wanting to get caught in the crossfire. It was exhausting. But here's where the story takes a wild turn. During one of my late-night research sessions, I stumbled across something strange. The street in front of my house wasn't fully owned by the HOA. In fact, a portion of it had been left in a weird gray area because of old zoning laws. The more I read, the more my jaw dropped. With the right moves, that street, or at least a big chunk of it, could actually be purchased. At first, I laughed at the thought. I mean, who buys a street? That's insane, right? But then I thought about Karen. I thought about the smug way she waved her folder in my face. I thought about the humiliation of being told I couldn't even use my own driveway. And suddenly, the idea didn't seem so crazy anymore. It seemed like the perfect revenge. I made some calls. I spoke with the city, the county office, and a couple of lawyers. And sure enough, my discovery was real. With enough patience, paperwork, and money, I could buy the street. The actual street Karen walked her dog on. The street she drove her car down every morning. The street she believed she controlled as part of her HOA kingdom. The idea took root. And once it did, I couldn't shake it. But before we go there, let me take you back to what Karen was doing during this time. Because while I was planning something huge, she was only making herself look worse. Karen began escalating. One morning, I found a bright orange notice taped to my door. It said I owed hundreds of dollars in fines for misusing HOA property. My blood boiled. She wasn't just harassing me anymore. She was trying to bleed me dry financially. I refused to pay, and that drove her absolutely crazy. Soon, she began patrolling the neighborhood like a guard dog. She would literally walk in circles around my house, taking pictures of every little thing, a trash bin left out too long, a light bulb that had gone out on the porch, even the way my curtains hung. She was desperate to make me look like the villain. But all she did was expose herself. Because neighbors who once stayed silent started to notice. They saw how much energy she was pouring into attacking me, and they started whispering behind her back. Some even pulled me aside and said, "We're with you. She's gone too far." I wasn't alone anymore. And that gave me even more strength to move forward with my plan. I'll never forget the day I signed the final papers. Sitting in that office, pen in hand, I felt a rush of power I had never felt before. I wasn't just defending my property anymore. I was flipping the entire script. With a single signature, I became the owner of the very street Karen had claimed as hers. Can you imagine that feeling? The street she used to stomp down with her clipboards and her complaints now belonged to me. She thought she had authority over my driveway, but now I had authority over the ground she walked on every single day. I didn't even know how to break the news to her. Part of me wanted to shout it from the rooftops. Another part of me wanted to wait for the perfect moment, the kind of moment she would never forget. And trust me, that moment came sooner than I expected. But I'll stop here for now. Because this story only gets crazier, and I want you to buckle up for the next part. If you're hooked right now, just wait until you hear what happened when Karen found out the truth. How do you think she reacted when she realized the street she walked on wasn't hers anymore? Did she fight harder, or did she finally break down? When I left you in the last part, I had just signed the papers. The street that Karen thought she controlled was officially mine. My hands were shaking as I held the documents, but not from fear, from excitement. From victory. From the sweet taste of justice. But here's the thing, a victory doesn't mean much unless the enemy knows about it. And trust me, I couldn't wait for the day Karen would learn the truth. It didn't take long. Just a week later, I got the perfect opportunity. I was outside mowing my lawn when I saw her marching toward me, her usual folder clutched in her arms. Her sunglasses gleamed in the sun, and her mouth was already twisted into that familiar scowl. She didn't even say hello. She launched straight into her latest attack. "You can't park that truck in your driveway. It violates HOA policy. You've ignored too many warnings. This is your final notice." Her voice was loud enough for the whole block to hear. Some neighbors peeked out from behind curtains, others stood on porches pretending not to listen, but I knew they were watching. Normally, I would have argued. Normally, I would have told her she was wrong. But this time, I just smiled. A calm, steady smile that threw her off balance. "What are you smiling at?" she snapped. And that's when I dropped the bombshell. "Karen," I said, "this driveway is mine. It's always been mine. And as of last week, the street you're standing on belongs to me too." Her face went blank. She blinked once, twice, like her brain was buffering. "What did you just say?" I pulled out my own folder, the one holding the signed papers, and handed it to her. She flipped through the pages, her hands trembling, her lips moving as she read the words out loud. "Owner, street parcel, transfer of rights." Her voice cracked. Her cheeks flushed red. She looked up at me, eyes wide with disbelief. You bought the street?" I nodded. "Yes, Karen. You claimed authority over something that wasn't yours. So I decided to take authority over something that actually matters. This street. My street. Your street. All mine now." For the first time, she had no words. You could feel the shift in the air. Neighbors who had been silently watching began to chuckle. Some even clapped. Karen's empire was crumbling, and everyone could see it. Her lips quivered, but she tried to stand tall. "You can't do this. The HOA controls this neighborhood." I tilted my head, savoring the moment. Actually, Karen, the HOA doesn't own this street. I do. Which means I get to decide what happens on it. And you know what? I think I'll allow everyone to park wherever they like, as long as they're respectful. No more bogus fines. No more harassment. No more power trips. Her jaw dropped. She tried to argue, but nothing came out. It was like all the oxygen had been sucked out of her lungs. For the first time since this battle began, Karen realized she had lost. But the story doesn't end there. Because Karen wasn't the kind of person to admit defeat gracefully. Oh no, she was the type to throw gasoline on a fire. The very next day, I found a letter stuffed into my mailbox. A furious, handwritten note from her. The words were scratched across the page like claws. You may think you've won, but this isn't over. The HOA will fight back. We will not let you destroy this community. I laughed. Out loud. Because at this point, she wasn't a queen anymore. She was a desperate villain whose kingdom had been stolen out from under her feet. Still, I knew I had to be smart. Owning the street gave me power, but it also gave me responsibility. If I made reckless moves, I'd look just as bad as Karen. So I played it carefully. First, I held a meeting with my neighbors. I invited everyone to gather right there on the newly purchased street. People brought lawn chairs, kids rode bikes, and for the first time in months, the atmosphere felt light instead of tense. I stood in front of them, holding the documents high for everyone to see. Neighbors, I said, I bought this street not for revenge, but for freedom. Freedom from unfair fines, freedom from harassment, and freedom from one person trying to control us all. From now on, this street belongs to us. We decide how to live here, not one power-hungry neighbor. The crowd erupted in cheers. People clapped, whistled, and shouted words of support. Some even came up to shake my hand. Karen, of course, stood off to the side, arms crossed, face burning red, steam practically rising from her ears. But there was nothing she could do. The papers were official. The law was on my side. Her reign was over. From that day forward, things changed. Neighbors who had once been afraid of Karen began standing up for themselves. They parked their cars without fear of fake violations. They painted their mailboxes whatever color they liked. They planted flowers, built little benches, and decorated their yards with pride. It was like the entire neighborhood had been set free. And me. I finally got to enjoy my home in peace. No more surprise notices. No more fake fines. No more arguments in my driveway. Just calm, quiet evenings where I could sit on my porch, sip a drink, and laugh about how crazy it all had been. But the best part? Seeing Karen walk down the street every morning, knowing she was stepping on my property. Knowing that the ground beneath her feet was no longer her weapon, it was my victory. Now, don't get me wrong. Life didn't magically turn perfect. Karen still lives there. She still grumbles under her breath, mutters complaints to anyone who will listen, and sends the occasional angry letter. But the difference is, she has no power anymore. She's just noise. And every time I see her, I remind myself of one simple truth. Bullies only win if you let them. I could have rolled over. I could have paid the fines, followed her ridiculous rules, and let her control my life. But instead, I fought back. I dug deeper. I found a way to turn the tables. And in the end, I didn't just defend my driveway. I bought the entire street she thought she ruled. So here's the lesson I want to leave you with. When someone tries to take what's yours, don't give up. Don't let their voice be louder than your truth. Stand tall, dig deep, and fight back in a way they'll never forget. Because sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't just proving them wrong, it's flipping the entire story upside down. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with a Karen in your life? Someone who tried to control you, intimidate you, or make your life miserable? What did you do about it? Drop your story in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this wild ride, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs a little reminder that standing up for yourself is always worth it. Because in the end, no matter how loud a Karen shouts, the truth will always win.